This episode of the Nerf Herder Council is brought to you by Audible. Visit audibletrial.com/NHC for your 30-day trial and a free audiobook download.
I'm Kevin Thompson. I'm Chubre from Return of the Jedi. You're listening to the Nerf Herder Council.
Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking Nerf herder.
You can't use that word. Only we can use that word.
Why, you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking Nerf herder.
You can't use that word. Only we can use that word.
You're tuned in to the Nerf Herder Council, your source for Star Wars opinion, conversation, and debate. Featuring your hosts, JT.
Stormtrooper armor deflects everything except Orback hooves. They're like a horse version of Thomas the Tank Engine.
AJ.
Yeah, Rebels is a lot like our show, where we think we have a good idea and then it just fails in execution.
Steve.
The vacuum of space does crazy things to your beehole out there, man.
On this episode of the Nerf Herder Council, to celebrate the 40th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back, we give our thoughts on the movie and even talk about some interesting little factoids.
This is the Nerf Herder Council.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Nerf Herder Council. I am your host, JT. With me is AJ.
Hello, hello.
With me also is Steve.
Hello.
And thanks for checking out another episode of the Nerf Herder Council. As usual, we are brought to you by Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/NHC for your 30-day trial and a free audiobook download. And don't forget, you can get your own customizable Nerf Herder Council swag at shop.nerfherdercouncil.com. So it's been a pretty busy week in Star Wars, at least in terms of anniversaries. Pretty much any Star Wars day in the May 20-something, there's an anniversary of some kind. And the big one, obviously, a couple days ago, at least for us, since we record before we put it out, this is pre-record, was the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. Empire Strikes Back. It was the 37th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. So, see, I told you, there's too many damn anniversaries. Revenge of the Sith, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. There's all these damn anniversaries. So
No one seemed to give a crap whatsoever that there should have been an anniversary for A New Hope.
yeah, but that's because it's an odd year. It was like 43 years. So I mean, it's with it being the 40-year anniversary of Empire, it's but a 37. I mean, if you did that, it'd be every year. It's the 49th anniversary of
That's true. I didn't give a crap about your birthday last year either, so.
Well, when do you, buddy? When do you?
Well, that was your 43rd anniversary.
44th actually.
Last year.
But who's last year? Okay.
I
Just
can do
making
math.
sure you can still count. Okay. Just making sure.
Oh, I'm sharp today, buddy. We watch out.
Well, so we definitely wanted to take the time to talk a little bit about The Empire Strikes Back. I know that most of the little factoids about the film are pretty well known, so I didn't really want to go there. But obviously, it's worth talking about on its 40th anniversary. It's supposed to be pretty much the highlight of Celebration this year, if Celebration happens. Which, if you follow Jimmy Mack on Twitter, he's 100% sure that it's not, and they just haven't announced it yet. But I just watched it the other day back to back with A New Hope when I was finishing up the giant Lego Millennium Falcon. Thanks again for that present a couple years ago, AJ. It's finally done. So
You're welcome. From a few years ago.
It's huge. It hangs. The only place I had to display it, Steve, was on top of my man cave fridge, and the front prongs hang over like a foot. So I mean, it's this thing. Oh, it's hilarious. It's hilarious. I mean,
it's going to hit the ground one of these days.
No, it's stable up there, but not entirely stable. Oh, I'm glad you're here to tell us these things.
Speaking of things that hang over by about a foot. No, just kidding.
Nice. Well, you could just turn that into a joke about my gut. So, but yeah, I mean, this thing is huge. It's awesome. The only problem is that some of the way it's constructed, it's a little flimsy. So transporting it anywhere is going to be an absolute pain in the ass. And it's just, I mean, getting it up there, I was going so slow from one room of the man cave to the other to move it because my building table's in the other room from where the fridge is. So it was definitely, I'm thinking to myself on Monday, I was like, man, if I drop this thing, like after all the work I put into it, I'm going to be so pissed.
You know, I noticed that if that is actually like a model of the original Millennium Falcon for the UCS thing, like I've noticed that a lot about the older Star Wars kits is that they were like super like they were look don't touch things because they would just fall apart if a small gust of wind would hit them. So if that's actually modeled correct, I'm not gonna say correctly, but if it is modeled to the age of when that original kit came out with Lego, I'm not surprised that it's super flimsy.
Well, I mean, for example, the top gun piece, like the gun turret or whatever, that whole thing is just resting on the top. There's nothing anchoring it to the middle of the model. So the last step is just setting it on there. So I mean, yeah. But
they, you know now though that like you could get like the UCS Slave 1 and you can throw that thing against a damn wall and like two pieces will fall off of it.
Right.
Yeah, they got really particular about that stuff down the road, but yeah, the early ones were nuts. They were like they'd fall apart as soon as you looked at them. They used magnets on a couple because they're like, we're not even going to stick pieces together. We're just going to hope that, magnetism holds this behemoth together.
I had one little tiny piece fall off the back. It was like kind of like just like a piece for show. And I was like, I can't turn this thing around to put this back on. I'm not going to, I finally went, screw this. It fell off. No one's ever going to see it. It's the part that's right up against the wall. like this is going in the bag of extra pieces. To hell with it. So
like I remember AJ let me build the original, like very first TIE fighter, the black and blue one that the color scheme made no damn sense on and everything. And
yeah.
By the time I was done with that thing, like you would set it down and it was so flimsy that it would actually lean to one side because of how weak the wings were. So yeah, you definitely were not playing with that or doing anything with it. That's for sure.
And that was a regular set. That wasn't even a collector series. That was supposed to be played with.
Yeah, right. That was a tiny one. Yeah.
See, if I ever did this again, if I built this again, I would definitely glue it as I go. I'd make sure I knew exactly where everything was going, and I would glue it. Because it's not like you want to keep taking it apart. I mean, it's 5,100 pieces. I mean, it took forever because it's the Leppen version. So of course, it's instead of each step having a numbered bag saying here's all the pieces you need for this step. It's no, here's a giant bag of 5,100 pieces. Go for it. And so I mean, AJ, you were with me. I mean, Steve, we spent. Was it 2 nights or something? Just separating the pieces into this bag is nothing but square, like flat square pieces. This is nothing but flat rectangle pieces. This is nothing but triangle pieces. Like because there was no other way to do it, and it seemed kind of dumb at the time, and it got really boring. But as I moved forward, it turned out to be the best idea that I possibly could have had. Because I mean, without that, there would have been no way that I would have gotten this thing finished with any
once
speed.
You get into once you get into the groove that that when you're looking at the next step, immediately where to reach for the flat pieces and the non-flat. So it just gets simple after a little while.
Yeah, it was. I mean, honestly, the only hard part was the pile of random stuff. What was like the one-off pieces, because that was a huge pile of just
Yeah.
wonky, weird things. And there was a couple times where you're just sitting there going stir crazy. Like I had to get up and look at the table from a different angle just to try and find like this one-off brick. I was like, God bless it. But
And you're right too. You got to leave that one together because honestly, like the older I've gotten, the more I actually started to enjoy taking them apart now. So like part of the joy for me at this point is like when I want to build a new one and I got to like clear space, I'll get something like the Sandcrawler. AJ, you know, that thing has been built, taken apart, built again by you, taken apart, and then built again by me. So that thing's on 3 times now. And it's at the point where I'm like, I could start at the very tail end of the book and start to take these things apart and then put them in the numbered bags for later. And it's actually fun to pull it apart that way. And then you know that next time you want to build it, you have the individually bag or numbered bags. You can just go right, fly through the instructions again and build it again whenever you feel like it. But yeah, trying to do it to a Leopard kit, that just sounds crazy with no numbered bags to know where to stop or anything.
I mean, the one benefit is that it took a lot longer to build, which, while on one hand it might seem like it kind of sucks, but it made it into a huge project, which, gave me something to do for quite a while. It was great. I mean, there were several weekends, since we've been on this COVID thing, like Saturday nights, I would just come upstairs at 9 o'clock. My wife would go to bed on a Saturday. She'd go to bed, and 9 o'clock, I went up here, listened to, my buddy Aiken do his classic metal show for the next 6 hours. And I just sat up there building Lego for 6 hours. It was a great Saturday night. So, now
it's a good time killer.
Yeah, it definitely was. So
you wrapped that up perfectly on time. Things are starting to reopen now. You're back to work. Like, I don't know when you would have gotten around to it again.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like a weekend project, but I mean, I did come up here some nights during the week too, but I tried not to because it was more time consuming than I thought. I would be like, yeah, I'm going to go up there for a half hour, like 2.5 hours later, I'm coming downstairs like, damn it, it's 11 o'clock at night. I got to get up for work. So.
This is why I don't play video games. Same thing.
Well, you got to get back into regular Battlefront because I finally got that from the PlayStation Store. I haven't had it in a while. And since they put the second one out, and it's $5. So
yeah, and then I heard July it's going to be free on PlayStation Plus. So after I just dropped $25 for it, I overspent by 20, and 2 months from now it'll be overspent by 25.
That's okay. The other one is supposed to be Spider-Man, and I just dropped like 30 on that one. So yeah, both games I just bought are now going to be free. Damn it!
Sweet. Well, I just picked up a hard drive. I got 2 fresh terabytes to fill up now.
Yeah, I got to do it myself. So, but anyways, we didn't want to talk about Lego. We wanted to talk about The Empire Strikes Back. So, why don't we get on topic?
Yeah, that's a good topic.
Yeah,
Overruled,
I figured
Steve. Whatever you're going to say, too bad.
No offense. I think people are sick and tired of hearing us talk about Lego. So, but yeah. So where I was going before I got sidetracked
tired
by
of
the
us
Falcon.
talking about anything.
Well, 23 people aren't. We have 23 listeners. So, but yeah, while I was doing the Falcon, I have a PA set up in that room, and I had my tablet going through it, and I had Star Wars movies playing. And the other day, I got through A New Hope and Empire, and it was, obviously it's the 40th anniversary, so it's something interesting to talk about. But I was really kind of struck for the first time about how different the movies really are, and how much bigger Empire really is. And this is probably a poor way to phrase it, but it's almost like I was kind of struck by how much more important Empire is. And I was really thinking a lot about that, and I found some interesting articles online about the movie that had some factoids that even super nerds like us I don't think had heard. But yeah, I mean, so what is your guys' like initial reaction to the movie? I know that you guys had it as your top Star Wars movie when we did our rankings a few episodes ago, but when somebody brings up Empire Strikes Back, like what are your first reactions? What do you first think of?
For me, it's the music. Like, the Imperial March is all over that thing, and everybody knows that song. So the first thing I think of when I think Empire is it's Vader's movie. Like, he's on a rampage, he's choking out admirals, and, it's the Empire all over the place in that movie, which, the first one is, the Empire is more of like a ghostly threat, right? Like, except for the Death Star, they're they're around and they're talked about, but the focus is more on the heroes and establishing who they are. You know?
Yeah, they don't see it. Doesn't seem as large, I guess, or as expansive as we find out that it is later.
Yeah, we get to see a lot more of how the Empire works in Empire Strikes Back. It seems like the camera spends a lot more time building up the threat of them instead of, it's kind of like they just pick up and go, well, you know the good guys. Let's tell you more about why the bad guys are so scary. And off you go.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point about the music, I actually was thinking about that today because I actually listened to the soundtrack while I was working, and the one thing that I kind of noticed is like you could basically sing the entire soundtrack for A New Hope, but then Empire, it seems like there's so much more emotional depth to it. Like you have you mentioned the Imperial March, but I mean Yoda's theme is just like such a beautiful piece of music, and it's it does feel like something befitting of a master of this incredible power. It's really cool. And then you've got stuff like the asteroid field, da, 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 things like that. So it's cool, and so I completely agree with you there. What about you, Steve? Like what do you first think of when you think about Empire?
Not to just be lazy about it, but other than the musical part of it, AJ pretty much nailed it. You know me and how much I like the bad guys and everything. So just the fact that this was like the one that they got over, like the bad guys got everything. Boba Fett got away with Han. Vader was choking every living thing that he possibly could the whole movie. Like just the fact that the bad guys got over is always gonna like just be the first thing that resonates with me in that movie.
Yeah, and I think that you make a very good point about Vader, because I think when people think of Darth Vader, I think everything that we kind of have come to know about him, and the mental image that we have of who he is and what he does is based off of his persona in Empire. Because there was nothing in there that was soft at all. I mean, in the first movie, he backed down to Tarkin, and and in obviously in Return of the Jedi, he gets redeemed. But in like you said, in the second movie, he's choking everything, and it's as soon as one of the admirals or something does something wrong, you're like, well, say goodbye to that guy, throw him in the trash heap.
Until the end, though. And that one, the last time I watched Empire, I never really came to a conclusion on this. He actually spares, is it Nita that he spares at the end?
No, it's Nita. No, remember, apology accepted, Captain Nita.
No, okay, Piet.
Yeah,
it's Piet, because Piet's the guy that starts off Return of the Jedi. Yeah, like he spares Piet at the end after he's gone on this like murder spree with all of his higher ups. Like, I'm not really sure what to make of that. Is he just like weary of the chase at that point? Or like, I don't know. What do you guys think his motivation was there?
I don't know. I've always wondered that myself. I wonder if it was like a conscious choice just to say, well, he's killed like 3 people already. Like he can't just, maybe he was out of people to promote. Maybe the next guy in line was a total screw off. And he's like, boy, it's going to be even way worse if I get rid of this guy. Like,
it's like when you're down to your 6th lineman, you're like, we're got to pull somebody up from the practice squad if anybody goes down.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I wonder if it was just a conscious decision saying we've had enough killing and stuff like that in the movie. I've never read anything saying that there's like a deleted scene or something where he does choke that guy out too, but I mean, obviously he doesn't, but I've never seen anything to suggest that it was ever, in the movie and removed or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen the occasional theory that says like that's a little bit of Anakin poking through, like he feels remorseful for all the death. But I'm like, you know how many people Vader has killed? I don't really think those 3 admirals are really going to plague him that much.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to say I tend to agree with you guys on your first thoughts about it. I always kind of go back to my first thought when I was a little kid when I watched it the first time when it came out, and I just remember thinking and feeling that everything was in trouble. The good guys were just they seemed so much weaker than the Empire, and at every turn they're in trouble. They're on Hoth, they're doing their thing, and then all of a sudden, the Empire found them, and then they get destroyed. And and then Han Solo goes on this crazy chase, and I'm like, oh, he's in trouble. It's him against the whole Empire, and then he gets thrown in carbonite, and Luke loses his hand. I'm like, the whole time I was just sitting there going, man, the good guys are screwed. Like, what's going to happen? This is so bad. And it's I've always felt it has kind of that dark vibe to it. Which, I think, especially if you compare it to A New Hope and Return of the Jedi, you could say that. I mean, it's not dark like, Revenge of the Sith or anything like that, but, it has that kind of almost hopeless air. Like nothing goes right, nothing's going to go right. So that's kind of like my first visceral reaction, excuse me, to the movie whenever I think about it when I watch it.
Well, it's interesting that you say that it's darker, because I do remember a bit of behind-the-scenes stuff where Irving Kershner said specifically, the lighting is very different in Empire. If you look at A New Hope, everything is brightly lit. Even the cockpit of the Falcon in the middle of space is brightly lit. Everything, it's more like a stage production, because they were going for that 1940s kind of vibe, and that's what they did at the time.
Yeah.
They overlit everything because the cameras were light hogs and couldn't pick things up. And Irving Kershner said he deliberately made a tonal shift to go to like mood lighting. So like the cockpit of the Falcon is dark, and then they go in the cave, and that's darker, and everything where bad stuff happens. I mean, how iconic is that visual of Vader in the freezing chamber with the backlit, where he's just silhouetted from one of the ramps that like loads into the freezing chamber, Like
yeah.
There wasn't anything like that. Even when they were attacking the Death Star, it's still very like brightly lit all across the spacescape. So like I love that tonal shift where you don't perceive it. Like you just look at the scene as a view and you're like, okay, this just looks like Star Wars to me. But you're right, that the additional color and the depth and the shadow, you're all taking that in subliminally. And it does lend itself to more of a I hate the word, but theatrical experience, right? Like it seems like a more expensive movie just because the lighting and everything is more dramatic.
Right. And to your point, one of the things that's always struck me is, you brought up the cockpit of the Falcon, and it always seems like I always think, man, there's that many lights in there. Like that thing is that detailed, because you didn't catch all that in A New Hope, but then in Empire it looked so much more, so much more subtle little lights and blinking things and all this other kind of crap going on. It was like, oh wow.
Where the hell did his dice go? That's what I want to know.
I still have a hard time even finding those things. That's one of those things. I'm like, man, I always missed it. I still always miss it. I'm just destined to not ever like see those properly, I suppose. But yeah, and you are right. I mean, it does seem like stage lighting compared to like mood lighting, between the two movies. Even though there are parts like the dinner room on Bespin where it's just Vader is all black and the room is all white, and then you've got the very definitive blue and orange colors in the carbonite chamber and stuff like that. So I mean, you definitely, there's definitely those sorts of things. I don't know. It's just, to me, like watching it back to back, it feels like Empire means something. It's like, this is one thing that struck me the other day, and I'd be interested to get your take on this, both of you guys. A New Hope is awesome, but it kind of seems like a one-off movie. And we know that there was more story written after that, but it kind of doesn't feel like it. Whereas in Empire, all of a sudden, like the characters matter. It wasn't just, here's the good guys, here's the bad guys, and and you've got the super good guy, and you got the smart aleck good guy, and then you got the damsel in distress, whatever the heck, whatever they call them in Empire Dreams. It's like, okay, well, they have, actual emotional motivations and things like that in the next movie. Like, okay, now we can make them people that actually do normal things and have normal thoughts and feelings and stuff like that. It just, on an emotional level, it feels so much bigger when you watch those back to back. I don't know if you guys ever noticed that or not. All right, I guess you didn't notice that.
No,
Cool.
sorry. I was hoping Steve was going to jump in there. No, you're right.
I always go after you usually, so.
No. This is the problem with doing this remotely. We at least got to turn cameras on or something, guys. Come on. Anyway, no, you're right. And we know the reason why. Like, Star Wars was a huge gamble, so there was no guarantee that he was going to get to tell any other part of the saga. So he picked the meaty middle chapter that could really stand on its own. But then you get to Empire, and the success of the franchise is kind of assured at that point with what kind of a phenomenon A New Hope was. So, that's when Empire Strikes Back was the first one to get its initial release with an episode title. Episode 4 was added, in the 1978 re-release, I think? It was in the second run, I think, of Star Wars that they actually subtitled it A New Hope.
Yeah, something like that.
So
I don't remember the exact date.
Yeah, so I think by the time you got to Empire Strikes Back, they knew they were going to be able to tell the 3-part story, so they had time to put more depth in the characters, knowing there was a movie coming after it that was going to pick up those plot threads and run with them.
See, I don't know about that though. That's something else I kind of like. I wonder where you stand on this, Steve. Like, obviously now we know in hindsight that Empire is basically what made Star Wars as popular as it is. I mean, it was so high quality, and it's just universally regarded as the best Star Wars movie. But if you think about it, if that movie had tanked, like, it's been said many times that if Yoda just looked stupid, the whole thing would have been a giant piece of shit. And I mean, if that movie would have tanked, I think Star Wars would have died, because you would have had, the first movie would be this enormous hit. Everyone's like, okay, this is killer. And then if the second one is garbage, I'm like, all right, well, that's a flash in the pan. Then no one really cares.
Absolutely.
I mean,
you're right. Like, if that second one would have came out and it just would have been complete crap, I don't think anybody would have cared when they released Episode 6 or 3, whatever they wanted to call it back in 1983. I don't think people would have cared at that point, because all they would have known was, the first movie was good, but the second one was trash. And Lord knows we've seen that with countless, movie franchises where, like, the first one is good and the second one is just complete trash. I mean, and then they decide to make like 9 more, like Fast and the Furious.
Right?
I was going to say Transformers.
Yeah, that too. I'm just peeking to the right at the DVD rack over here, and I'm just like, dude, it's happened so many times that it's actually hard to pinpoint one, to tell you the truth. But yeah, Transformers is a perfect example of that.
I think Star Wars lucked out. I don't know how George was able to like deliberately write it this way, but you're right. A New Hope stands on its own. It can just be its own self-contained movie, and it's great from start to finish. But it was also the middle chapter, so he knew where the story was going if he had a chance to tell that. So when 4 took off and was a huge hit, he had 5 roughly sketched out, instead of like, so many times now where people will take a flyer on a movie, it comes to be a hit, and they're like, oh crap, now we got to write a sequel. Okay, what can we do?
Yeah, that definitely helped his cause, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to look up the date of that. Now you got me thinking about that, the date of when they changed it to actually say Episode 4. So it's going through all the...
knowing that he had 3 stories sketched, drawn out in his mind already, it certainly helped, because, I think you're right, AJ. That's the main problem, is that these guys write these movies and then they just sit back and they start to collect money, and then they come to the realization at some point that it's like, oh my God, we have to make another one, and then they just panic. But at least George, knowing that he had the idea ahead of time, was already beneficial to making sure that he didn't fall into that same trap.
Yeah, they're so focused on the first one, they never give any thought to where the story is going to go after that. And especially if you're trying to do a franchise, you've got to think ahead, because if it's successful, you're going to have to make sequels. So, yeah, George was just, I guess, ambitious enough to think that he had I think it's pretty much known at this point he had a 9-part story at that time, right? No one believes the 6-part BS anymore.
Well, who can ever really get the true story of that? I mean, it's
Right.
He had 7, 8, 9. He didn't have 7, 8, 9. I mean,
But you're right.
So, I mean,
Empire is freaking weird. Like, we got giant. I'm not trying to quote Family Guy, but it's a great summary. Giant robot camels in the snow.
yeah, right.
And chicken walkers. The ATST makes its first appearance in the Battle of Hoth.
Yep.
Boy, I really pay no attention, but apparently, I guess there are speeder bikes of some kind in there too. Or has that just been like added as like a cross section thing?
I have never seen that. I didn't know that.
I think it's been retconned that the AT-ATs were carrying speeder bikes. We just didn't see them deployed. But yeah, so you got that. You've got Yoda, which is freaking weird. Yoda's just a frog with elf ears, basically.
Yeah, it's staggering to me to look at the concept art for Yoda and how so much of it was just so damn bad. And some of the ideas that I was reading about, I was looking up articles to find out little tidbits that, I'd never known. And I guess one of them was that originally in the script, like one of the original ideas for the Wampa was that it was supposed to have like mystical powers or something. And one of those powers included like swimming through the snow. And I'm just like, I mean, some of the stuff that gets left on the cutting room floor is just, I mean, you could picture it in the movie and going, oh my Lord. I mean, it would almost be like, it'd be like if you had a Jedi and a ship blew up and they were like floating through space and survived. Like, imagine writing that and leaving it in the movie. Oh, sorry. My bad.
Yeah. To further your point, Gwen and I have Gwen more than me. I just kind of do it to help her out. But she recently got back into the Card Trader app. And just a couple of weeks ago, they did a whole set on the Ralph McQuarrie concept things, sketches. And man, Yoda looked like absolute trash, dude.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, if that would have been it, I'm like, like that's just the thought that goes through my head because we know Yoda now. I don't know if maybe the concept art would have turned into reality. We might feel different, but looking at it now, it's just like, oh my God, I can't believe that was even like thought of, to tell you the truth. It looks so bad.
Yeah. They could have so easily screwed it up. It just seems like, it almost seems like the original trilogy is just this confluence of just incredible circumstances that arose where in the face of, a situation where everything could have been utter crap, it turned out the opposite. I mean, it's, stuff like I say, the Wampa swimming through the snow, like stuff like that. I mean, Yoda looking like the concept art. It just, oh man. And it didn't. And there were other like stupid ideas they had. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I don't want to really look them up while we're talking. But I mean, there were some other things that you read and you're going, what the hell is that? So, I mean, they really picked the best of the stuff. So,
well, people always lose their mind over the concept stuff. But I mean, JT, being in a band and writing music, like it's an assembly process, right? Like you throw a bunch of crap out there, and some of it's bad. Sometimes it's just an exercise in getting the bad ideas out, so you can focus on what's left.
Yeah, I mean that's true, and thankfully they made some good decisions in this one. Speaking of decisions, something I read about, I didn't know this, that the I love you, I know. I mean, everybody knows that they just made it up at the last second because it was supposed to be I love you too, and it wasn't working. But what I didn't know is that, when Irvin Kershner and Harrison Ford put that in there, like, this is great. George Lucas still hated it, and he's like, this sucks, and he still wanted to pull it, and the other two were fighting for it, and I guess they did like almost like a test screening, and one test screening had the I love you too, and the other one had the I know, and people went bonkers for they loved the I know, like, and that's why it stayed in. George Lucas was like, all right, I guess people actually like this. So I did not know that. So another thing that I did not know, and I don't know how familiar, I mean, AJ, this might be more familiar to you than to you, Steve, but obviously we know that one of the military guys for the Empire, the one who was talking to Vader when he, the top of the cryo chamber, whatever it is, comes off, and he's like, he felt surprised, was wiser. That guy, obviously, we know he ended up as Walter Donovan in the third Indiana Jones movie.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did not know until today was Admiral Ozzel, the guy who played him, was also in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and he's the guy that played Hitler. I did not know that. And when I saw that come across the screen, I was watching Star Wars Explained has like 101 facts you didn't know about Empire or something. I watched it today, and some of them are stock, but some of them are stuff like that. I was like, holy crap, I didn't know that. When you look at the guy, no, in hindsight, you're like, oh yeah, that is the guy that played Hitler. So both of them ended up in an Indiana Jones movie. I did not know that.
Dude, that is crazy because, I mean, Ozzel's got like all gray and white hair, so I never put the two and two together because Last Crusade was like, what, like 6 years later or something? No, 9 years later.
1989. No, 9 years later because it was 89.
Yeah, so seeing Hitler, with the black mustache and hair, like I would never think that Ozzel was the same dude.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's all kinds of weird things. Like here's an interesting little trivia question for you guys that I did not know. When was the first appearance of Boba Fett in Star Wars?
Well, now you got to get specific.
No, when was Boba Fett first unveiled? Like, that's the better way to phrase it. When was Boba Fett first unveiled?
So we're not talking holiday special then?
Well, you got to answer the question. I mean, quit ruining it, you ass.
Well, he appears in animated form in the holiday special, but I thought you were asking when he made his live appearance.
No, because it's actually his debut is actually before the holiday special. He was actually in a Star Wars parade, I think in California or something in like '78. And in that Star Wars Explained video, they actually have a newspaper article that shows him walking next to Darth Vader. It's like the first time anybody had seen that costume.
Was it colored or was it still the white prototype one?
It looked colored to me. I mean, obviously the newspaper article was black and white. Excuse me. So, yeah, I don't know for sure. It looked like it was colored, but again, I can't say for sure. But I'm pretty sure that it was. But I mean, I never knew that.
Well, that's one of those obscure things that you're going to remember for a random Star Wars trivia night, because those are the kind of stupid ass questions they like to ask.
Right? Yeah, dude. There's all kinds of weird things that that I was reading about. I mean, even things about like the end scene. They had to add a couple scenes after it had already come out in theaters. It came out May 25th of 1980. And it was the 70 millimeter version. And then they added a couple scenes for the 35 millimeter release, which was on June 18th of 1980. And it was because they felt like George Lucas had, in watching it after it was all put together, didn't think that it was quite clear where Lando and Chewie were in the Falcon in relation to the medical frigate where Leia and the droids and Luke were. So he wanted to clarify, spatially where they were in relation to each other. And so he did some pickup scenes. And that's how it appears in the version that we all know. So I never knew that. I also did not know that part of the Dagobah scene was filmed in George Lucas's swimming pool in his backyard. So yeah, he was having a swimming pool put in, and the swamp snake, what the hell? It's a something snake, the dragon snake. That scene of it, like you could see the hump of it come out of the water real quick. It's like a close up. That was filmed in like the muddy pit that became George Lucas's swimming pool in his backyard. So that was kind of weird.
Yeah, a little bit.
So yeah, just all kinds of so check that video out. I mean, it's only like 15 minutes long. So he blasts through each fact like about a couple seconds at a time. It's really interesting. I mean, obviously some of the stuff we know, but a lot of it we don't. It's kind of fascinating. So yeah, again, like we said at the beginning, it's pretty obvious to say that Empire is everyone's favorite and it's the most popular. But I just think it's the most important and I've seen a lot of debates about it versus A New Hope and whatnot. And yeah, I mean, A New Hope started it all. But, you know, AJ, while you were busy eating, which is always a good thing to do in the middle of a podcast when we're trying to have a conversation, Steve and I were talking about, like I say, like, if that movie had failed, Star Wars as we know it wouldn't exist. So, you know, I think its importance gets lost sometimes in how much people love it. You know, again, it's just there's so much there, and a lot of the lore that we now know comes from that movie. I mean, if you think about it, we got, you know, X-Wings and TIE fighters and the Millennium Falcon and New Hope, but all these other things, you know, really an understanding of the Force and, you know, the might and size of the Empire and everything. I think most of Star Wars lore that became so iconic really came from Empire more so than any of the other movies, I think. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
Just going off the ship roster, now that you point that out, you're absolutely right. Like, let's see. So A New Hope gave us Star Destroyers, TIE Fighters, and Death Star. That was it. But you go to Empire Strikes Back, you've got the Super Star Destroyer. You got the Viper droids. You've got TIE bombers, Imperial shuttle. Mm-hmm. Like, all that stuff came out of the next movie.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that one?
And the AT-ATs.
Oh, right. Yeah, the ground stuff, too. Yeah, and the AT-ST.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, you had some of it in A New Hope, but, I mean, really, the main ship designs were right there. I mean, and they weren't really...
Snowtroopers, too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the different kind of stormtroopers, I mean, that started there, obviously. But, I mean, if you think about it, we really didn't start seeing, like, crazy new ship designs until... I mean, even in the prequels, I mean, there were versions of X-Wing, so it wasn't really a different thing. It was just, okay, what would an X-Wing look like if it was like an early version? And, you know, as opposed to, you know, Rogue One, we've got U-Wing fighters, and then, you know, there's something else in that movie. I'm drawing a complete blank for some reason, but, you know, the different shaped, you know, TIE fighters with only 2 wings or whatever, and all these other different things, you know, but it all... You know, the last time we really saw new vehicles and all that kind of stuff, for the most part, was really Empire.
Actually, hell yeah, the weirdest ship in all of Star Wars to me will always be the Slave One.
Really?
I mean, that thing looks like a giant foot.
Yeah. I for some reason, I've always thought B-Wing fighters really look kind of goofy. So that's always been a weird one for me.
Well, they both kind of do the same thing, right? Where like they're kind of stood up instead of laid back and sleek. And it's such a weird way to like put a ship together. I mean, as weird as the Falcon looks being all asymmetrical with the cockpit, at least it's still like it's long and it's not tall. And those two ships do the exact opposite. And in fact, Boba Fett's is even weirder because it lands looking normal and then it stands up to fly.
Yeah. I guess I just never noticed it because
the Falcon almost ended up looking weird, though. It wasn't one of the concepts of it basically the same design almost, but on its side with like the cockpit on the top of it.
Yeah, they had some weird version of that. I mean, hell, actually the Falcon originally was supposed to be what ended up being the Tantive 4. So that was what it was supposed to be initially, and then they just ended up using it for, you know, as the Tantive 4 instead. But yeah, I think I remember seeing what you're talking about, Steve. It was really kind of.
I don't remember what I saw it on, but I remember seeing it at some point, saying that it was like an early, you know, obviously sketch, but like an idea of what they wanted to do with the Falcon, and it was just like almost the same design, except it just flew sideways the entire time with the cockpit being up on the very tip top of it instead of off to the side.
Yeah, I wonder if that was like kind of like the impetus for the B-Wing design that we, you know, eventually saw.
It could be. You know, they recycle a ton of ideas. JT, you're the big Millennium Falcon guy. Watching A New Hope back to back with Empire Strikes Back, how different did the portrayal of the ship seem to you?
Yeah, I mean, going with our theme of it being just bigger and more important, you know, initially when they're on Hoth, you're like, okay, this thing's falling apart. Like, how the hell are they going to get anywhere with this thing? And then it ends up on this unbelievable chase, and come to find out, it can outmaneuver much smaller, supposedly more nimble fighters, and TIE fighters and whatnot. They pull off that move of, sticking to the side of the, the bridge of the Star Destroyer and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was, I think you knew that the Millennium Falcon was cool, but it was, I think it became a character of its own in Empire, because in A New Hope, you're like, okay, this ship, okay, it made the Kessel run in 12 parsecs, it's fast. But it was kind of like, okay, that's just Han Solo's ship. Like, Han Solo was like the focal point. But I think in Empire, the Falcon really kind of became legendary and became like kind of like its own, it was like its own entity separate from Han Solo. It was just like, holy shit, it's the Falcon.
Yeah,
because,
in A New Hope, it was like Han Solo told you all the cool things the ship did. And then in Empire, you actually saw it do cool things.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. I mean, and then, in subsequent films, obviously in Jedi, you had Lando flying it, Lando and Nien Nunb. And then obviously now you've got Rey flying it, and you have Poe flying it, and so it took on a life of its own because of the things that they had it doing in Empire. Which for me, again, as a kid, I go back to my initial feelings, and it was, Han Solo and the Millennium Falcon and A New Hope were like the coolest things in the world to me. So when the Falcon was flying around kicking ass in Empire, I loved it. I was like, this is great. Yeah, that ship's even cooler than I thought it was. So it's still to this day. I mean, it's the ringtone on my phone. That piece of music just gets me every time I hear it. Like, it's got a badass theme song, and every time you hear that, some ass kicking by the Falcon is coming. So but yeah, I completely agree with that. So
Steve, do you really feel like Empire is a more expensive movie? Because I know it had like 3 times the budget, but JT, until you brought that up, I never really thought that, by comparison, that A New Hope looked cheap.
I guess Steve's not going to answer your question.
No,
Didn't you say JT?
No, he said, Steve, will you wake up over there for Christ's sakes?
Hey, my Skype keeps cutting in and out. How am I supposed to know?
Nice internet.
So the question to you, Steve, was JT had mentioned how Empire Strikes Back looks a lot more expensive than A New Hope. Did you ever pick up on that?
Not really. They definitely did a good enough job to make it. I don't want to say seem like they had the same budget, because we know with all the extra characters and the extra, models that needed made for the ships and all that, they obviously had a way bigger budget to use. But no, it never really clicked while watching the movie to go and notice that they definitely had all that extra money, aside from, like you had mentioned earlier, with the ships and the extra, the snow troopers and all that added on stuff. But past that, not really, not at all.
Yeah, maybe the difference was in the details, but I never really picked up on a difference. Like, if I think about the set pieces, I'm like, okay, well, you got like 3 or 4 major ones in A New Hope, and Mos Eisley was pretty big. I mean, I can think of, from a filmmaking standpoint, you've got to travel to the location, you've got to build all these sets. It's in the middle of the friggin' desert, so it's got to be expensive to get everything out there and take care of the cast and crew and all that stuff. I can't really think of like that much that goes on in Empire where I'm like, wow, this just totally blows out the scope of Star Wars like we'd never seen before. Like, the asteroid field is complicated to make, but it's not like big,
Yeah.
I think there's more going on in the scenes, I would say. But yeah, I don't think it makes A New Hope look cheap, to use the way that you phrased it. I'm trying to think if there's any comparisons. I mean, obviously they added stuff to, A New Hope digitally for the re-releases and whatnot.
I think they might have just been able to shoot some more difficult stuff. Like, you had the snow environment, so they had to deal with all of those problems. And you had, the Dagobah Swamp, and water and film sets are like they're terrible together, right? So I think they just did more difficult stuff that cost more. So they used the money to film things they couldn't afford originally instead of using it to make things bigger, which really helps tie the movies together, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it still feels much bigger to me.
How so? Can you give an example?
Yeah, it's just. I'm trying to think. I mean, the space battles, first of all, are more involved. You know, like, I mean, you bring up the asteroid field and whatnot, but I mean, there's so much going on in that scene. You know, there's like all this crap flying around, and you know, the Falcons going in and out, and the TIE fighters are going in and out. You know, they go down towards the big, you know, in the crater in the big asteroid. You know, that side. You know, when the Falcon goes on its side, it does that kind of thing. You know, I mean, just the Battle of Hoth. There's a lot of elements in that, and you know, you didn't really have that in A New Hope. It was, I mean, if you really kind of look at A New Hope, the shots are pretty singular. So, you know, it's, you know, even in, you know, stuff like the Obi-Wan Vader fight, the camera's just focused on them. You can't really see in the background all this other stuff happening with, you know, stormtroopers or whatever, and you know, them running to the ship. It's like, okay, they're fighting. Now we got a close up on Luke Skywalker going, holy crap, they're fighting. Whereas I think there's a lot more in the frame in most of the scenes in Empire. You know what I mean? Like visually, there's more going on to the eye.
I think maybe one of the most standout examples of expense on Empire Strikes Back for me was Mark Hamill getting in that car accident, so the scarring looked realistic in the Hoth cave with the Wampa, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and that's dedication to your craft when you actually say, yes, I will be a victim in vehicular assault to make things more believable, you know, when the sequel comes out.
Like I get what you're saying, John. I think that the thing is, when that stuff's going on in the background, it's so natural that you kind of tend to forget about it. You know, that it's just there. Like when I was going through all my broadcasting stuff, when we learned to like run cameras and stuff, they said you do your job properly when nobody knows you're there. And it kind of has the same feeling that like all that extra stuff's going on in the background, but it just has such a natural feeling that it should be there that you're not really focused on that. So there's probably tons of extra stuff going on that you're just not paying any attention to because you feel like it should be there all the time anyways.
Yeah, like it's like the realism of it. You know, it's and maybe that's part of it, AJ, is that it just, because it looks real, it looks believable. You don't really think of it in terms of, well, this is so much better and bigger than what I saw in the previous movie. So maybe that's it.
Yeah, it's also getting hard for me now because I'm trying to think of what the special edition changed. Like, I know we got Cloud City, correct me if I'm wrong, there were like no windows in that thing in the original version, right? Like, once they got inside, it was just white walls everywhere.
Yeah, and there was no, you couldn't see like out to the skyscapes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. So all the windows and all those background plates, those were all added later with the special edition. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that sort of stuff would be like, oh yeah, well, if you got a green screen, all that stuff in, that stuff was a pain in the butt. But with computers and stuff, 20 years after the movie was made, that's a lot easier.
Yeah, I was actually watching one of those videos today. It was it's a comparison of what changed between 1980 and 2011 with the Blu-ray release. Some of the stuff they add, like the guy specifically says that, you know, by far Empire had the least amount of stuff added to it. But some of the stuff that they added was really stupid. I mean, this is just a side point, but dumb little. I mean, like adding like 2 lines of dialogue. Like that's it. Like what do you need that for? What does that matter? I mean, so it was. Whereas I don't think you need it. I just think when it says like it's George Lucas's, that's his, you know, that's the way he always pictured it. Man, he thinks things down to down to the nitty gritty, man. If that's what you're adding,
Yeah, that's his
So-
definitive vision.
yeah.
If
But
you
yeah, I
watch
mean-
the special edition, Han clearly blinks 2 extra times compared to the original.
I heard they gave eyelids to the Tauntauns.
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
Actually, I saw something cool about the Tauntauns today. You know how there's the deleted scene with the Wampas where they have that like one of the rooms. If you're looking in the hallway, has like almost like it looks like kind of like a nuclear symbol on it.
Mm-hmm.
If you look real quick, like a sticker. Well, that's where they would trap the Wampas, and I guess like they got loose at one point, and one of the remnants of that scene is that it shows like the rebels congregating in the the ice hangar, and if you look in the bottom right, you could see one of the rebels tending to an injured Tauntaun lying on the ground. And
Really?
it's one of those things. Yeah, it's one of those things I'd never noticed before, but it's like
I'm gonna have to go back and look for that now.
yeah, I mean because it was referencing that scene that got cut. That the Tauntauns got out and were messing people, or the Wampas, excuse me, got out and were messing people up.
I like it.
In the Rebel
I
base.
want it to be Tauntauns now. I want to watch a Tauntaun rampage.
Maurice the Tauntaun from Robot Chicken.
Yeah.
Where's Maurice? I could smell him. So good. So yeah, well, that's all I had. I just kind of wanted to talk about the movie for a little bit. Like I say, talking about why it's the best Star Wars movie, I think is, we've done that many times. So I kind of wanted to bring up some other stuff and just kind of discuss it a little bit since it is the 40th anniversary. One last thing, I know one of my favorite memories is as a kid, I had like a little record player, and I had the record of Empire Strikes Back, and it had all the cool sound effects from the movie and all this stuff and the dialogue, and you read along with a book. And I remember I warped the ever-living bejesus out of that record, playing it over and over and over again. Like,
Oh, if we're
that was one of
flashing
my
back.
favorite.
If
Oh,
we're flashing
yeah,
back,
dude,
I got one for you too. Then remember the crappy little plastic playset that we had, where it was like a molded plastic tray. It had the shield generator coming out of it, and those super tiny, like less than a half-inch tall little figures that you could
Oh yeah,
position
yeah.
around. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I don't even know if there was any more features than that, or if it was just like little crappy monochrome figures and a hollow plastic molded tray. But yeah, like that snow battle was just like burned in my head. And I always remember as a kid looking at the shield generator and going like, you know what? That reminds me of like the ice cubes that come out of our ice maker in the freezer. Like maybe that's why it looked. I don't know if they made the ice cubes look like the shield generator, or if they made the shield generator look like the ice cubes, but they're both frozen and they both have the same shape. There's got to be a connection.
Right. I remember seeing those toys as a kid, like in the store. Like, I would want the action figures, and I had a bunch of them, but I remember looking at the vehicles, and we didn't have a lot of them, but especially looking at stuff like the AT-AT and the Millennium Falcon, I was like, I'll never be able to have those, man. Those are way too big and way too expensive, and I never did. Even to this day, I've never had the AT-AT. I've never had the Millennium Falcon, and those are like the two big ones that you could get. And I just remember always being blown away seeing those at the store, like as like the holy grail of toys, like that I would never ever get.
Yeah.
Like,
most of the Star Wars boxes I would look at and be like, that's gigantic. There's no way in hell I'll ever get that.
yeah.
But I do
So it
remember
was
the pinnacle of 80s toy tech was the Tauntaun, though.
where you stick the guy in it.
Yeah, it had like the fake rubber legs molded onto the Tauntaun to look like the guy was riding them.
No, the Tauntaun had the spring loaded like trapdoor on his back, so you stuck his legs inside the Tauntaun.
Right, and then the Tauntaun itself had fake legs to like simulate like the guy on his back that was actually sticking into him was instead splaying his legs to ride him.
I don't remember that part.
Yeah, there were fake legs on the Tauntaun because otherwise you're looking at the guy like, where'd your lower half go, dude?
Are you sure about that? I'm
Yeah.
calling BS.
They used it on He-Man figures too for like Panther and Battle Cat.
Oh God. That's a whole nother show. Yeah, that was God, I don't remember the fake legs on the Tauntaun. I do not remember that.
I might be channeling He-Man. I don't know, but I remember the trap door, and I know on He-Man they had the trap door, and they put fake legs on the toy then.
Now I want to look this up, damn it, but like if my internet would work quick enough, I get Kenner Tauntaun. What? Yeah, I sometimes think about going, like, if I had a DeLorean, going back and stealing from myself as a kid, just like on Christmas morning, waiting until I run in the other room and just going and hoarding all the toys I was given and putting them in a box and burying them somewhere. And then coming back to it because they'd be worth so much money by now. But, then I would be a disappointed little kid. I'd say, I used to have those toys, but someone stole them.
Hey, Steve, was Empire the first movie you saw out of Star Wars?
No. Because I got into it so late. The VHS of the original trilogy had come out, so I definitely watched episode 4 first. But
oh wow, I figured with you being such a Vader honk that episode 5 would have been your entry to the franchise.
No, I definitely watched them in order when the VHSs came out back in the mid 90s or whatever the hell it was.
So when Vader was his most dickish, that's what got you into him?
Pretty much.
Where have you been, AJ? He said that many times.
Says a lot about me, doesn't it?
I don't know. There was like actual depth to the character in episode 5, so I just assumed maybe that was your entry point because 1, he had depth, and 2, he choked the hell out of like anybody who pissed him off. But no, you went straight for the, you're part of a rebel alliance and a traitor. Take her away.
He likes the bad guys, man.
Yeah. I mean, I probably didn't really like him after episode 4 the same way, after watching the entire trilogy, though. I was like, yeah, that's my guy right there, though.
All right, I pulled up a picture of the Tauntaun, and it looks like brown fur on the side, like they kind of like maybe put like legs that like they're wrapped in fur.
Okay, so they did something to cover the fact that the actual action figure legs are sticking inside the Tauntaun at that point, right?
It looks like it, yeah. It kind of looks like the foot's in a stirrup made of fur. So you have to look at it yourself. But I'm pretty sure that you may be right. But it's also a smaller picture, so I guess, who knows. But I can't find a close-up of the damn saddle. And the one I have is
you're right.
blurry.
It's just a big furry thing, but it's got lumps in the shape of legs.
But doesn't it look like it's like toes sticking out, like that, like they're in a saddle or something?
Yeah, it looks like you got legs and stirrups or something.
Well, a question we'll never have answered unless somebody can actually let us know in the comments. But so, on that note, why don't we close up shop now that we're done talking about like Kenner Tauntauns? But thanks again, everyone, for checking out another episode of the Nerf Herder Council. Again, we are brought to you by Audible. Go to audibletrial.com/NHC for your 30-day trial and a free audiobook download. Get your customized Nerf Herder Council swag at shop.nerfherdercouncil.com. You can find us pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts: Spreaker, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Podbean. And just look us up on podcast apps and we're pretty much there. The website is nerfherdercouncil.com. If you'd like to send us an email, you can do so at nerfherdercouncil@gmail.com. And we are on Facebook if you'd like to look us up there. And we are active on our Twitter page, which is at NHC Podcast. So once again, I'm your host, JT, at Dog Pound Jedi. He is AJ.
Go on to Spreaker.com/user/NHC podcast and listen to our bonus commentary track for Caravan of Courage, which is actually for the Battle of Endor. So far, only 4 people listened to it, and we tried way too hard on that thing. So go listen to it at Drake Adams 579.
Hey, Steve.
I am nowhere near as long-winded as that at JSteve1005.
We will catch you next time.
bolts is never gonna get us past that blockade.
This bucket's got a few surprises left in her. Plus me and Chewie are on it. Ain't that right, Chewie?
Hell yeah, you my nerf herder.
You my nerf herder.